Johnson & Wales University and the Distinguished Visiting Chef Committee proudly presents the Distinguished Visiting Chef Series, an educational resource and video reference library for culinary students and professionals. Today's guest chef, Derek Wagner.
Morning, everyone.
Morning.
I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedules. I would like to just introduce myself. I'm Paul McVetti, Interim Dean at the College of Culinary Arts and Dean of Culinary Academics. I'm excited that the chef that we have here 10 years ago or 12 years ago, in 1999, 97, he earned his associate degree in culinary arts here at Johnson & Wales. So he sat in your seats not too long ago. In 1999, he earned his bachelor's degree in food marketing, and from there, he decided to go to California, and he was at a crossroads. What did he want to do in his career? What did he want to be? He had contemplated thoughts about staying in the food service industry and also going into marketing. So he went to California, and he went cooking with his collegiate friends, his buddies, and that really inspired him to decide to stay in the food service industry. And at the age of 24, he bought a restaurant, and from there, 10 years later, owning the restaurant, it's been recognized as one of the best restaurants in the world, 3 years in a row. And I'd like to introduce a couple people before we start, and I introduce Chef Wagner. First, I'd like to introduce our University Provost, Vera Gall. Good morning. Next, I'd like to introduce some of the students from Connecticut. There's a variation of students here. They're all high school students. They're interested in coming to Johnson & Wales. So thank you very much for being here. Today out of school for you, that's great. But you're continuing your education in the field that you want. So thank you for being here. Next, I'd like to introduce Dr. Stanley Nikas. He is a co-founder. In 1979, he came up with the idea with our chancellor, Dr. Bowen, of starting a distinguished visiting chef program. So welcome, Dr. Stanley Nikas. Assisting our chef is Department Chair Bill Idell. Chef Idell has been working with Stanley the last couple days, and he's been working with Chef Derek Wagner. And next, I'd like to introduce Chloe Marshall. And Chloe is a DVC Distinguished Visiting Chef Scholarship recipient. She'll be receiving $2,000 as a scholarship in honor of Chef Wagner. And please congratulate her on that. And our star of the day is Chef Derek Wagner. Please welcome him. He is full of information. This is an open session where if you have questions, please ask your questions, and Chef Wagner will be more than pleased to answer and give his advice to you. All right, Derek, welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is this thing on? There we go. Whoa. It's so nice to be here. Hi, everybody. You can say hi back. I want this to be fun. Yeah, there we go. There you go. For me, one of the most important things, as stressful as this business is to try to keep things fun and light. It's hard work. It's not easy, as many of you already know, and many of you are about to find out over the course of the next few years. It's difficult work. There's a lot of things you could be doing to make more money and work less. This isn't one of them. This is something that you have to love to do. It's something that you have to care about. This is something that has to mean so much to you that it hurts when it's not right. Which makes the day full of ups and downs and highs and lows. But with that being said, I really try to bring a sense of enjoyment when I come to the kitchen and when we cook, and especially when we're sharing information like this. Some of my cooks might say a little differently when it's hot and everything's humming and buzzing on the line, but at the end of the day, it's good to have a laugh and share good stories and smile while you cook. Happy cooks make happy food. I'm a firm believer in that. So I want today to be fun. I want you guys to ask as many questions as possible. I'm here for you guys. I want you guys to get something out of this. So please ask questions the whole time. If you want to talk, I could talk for hours, as you'll soon find out. I'll try to come up for air a few times and let you guys get some words in. And beyond that, you know, we can talk about food, we can talk about philosophy. Of course, we're going to talk about the recipes and the actual dishes that we're doing here today. But there's so much to learn about this business, as Chef Stanley can tell you. Meeting him over the last few days has been extremely enjoyable and humbling at the same time. I thought going on 11 years of business was a long time, and Chef's going on 60 years in the that the restaurant's been open, I think. Yeah, so I'm still a pup. So, but it's been a lot of fun with Chloe, and she's done a great job. She's done a lot of the prep that you're going to be tasting and seeing today. So again, give her a round of applause, and I'm trying to make her as nervous as possible. So that being said, we're going to get going. I'll tell you a little bit about myself while I'm heating the pan up for the soup here, and a little bit about what we're going to do today. You know, when asked what I wanted to cook and make for y'all, I really was racking my brain, and I think I was driving them crazy because I didn't submit the menu till about a week ago, because I just wanted to do something fun and something that would make sense for everyone here. So I decided to keep it. We're going to turn that down just a little bit, Chef. What would you guys want to do? You know, what would tell you a little bit about me, and then hopefully be interesting for you guys to see and to learn. So I decided it's fall. What I do is very seasonally inspired. I'm really big proponent of local sourcing whenever possible, or sourcing good ingredients, and having integrity of purpose and of ingredient and content. So I wanted to do something wholesome and fun and seasonal. So I decided to do a small 4-course menu. That was something that you might see at the restaurant if you came in for dinner. So we're going to start, we're talking about fall in New England. We're starting with a soup of turnips. We're going to go next into some crudo, which has become one of my favorite dishes to make with fresh seafood, and then pork. We're doing the belly today. A lot of people, who likes bacon? Anybody? Yeah. Everybody loves pork belly and bacon. You know, offcuts are really popular right now. We're getting back into this old world style of using the whole animal and not wasting anything. So belly and all the bits and pieces that we use other than your primary cuts or your center of the plate traditional steak cuts, if you will, are starting to get their due deserve, and we're going to feature the pork belly today. Not so much an offcut anymore because it's become so popular over the last few years. And then we're just going to finish with a pumpkin cake. So I'll start with the soup. When I'm planning a menu, this thing, Bill, did you booby trap this thing? No. He said he was going to trip me up today, but I'm just waiting for it. No. When I'm doing a seasonal menu like this, there's a lot of things I try to think about. I try to think about variety. I try to think about what the farmers have to offer, which we can talk about that too. That's something that if you make the commitment to source locally and to work with smaller farmers and producers, you really become at their whim and not at their mercy, so to speak, but really at the whim of what they have available and all the trials and tribulations that they have on a day-to-day basis. You know, you can't always just pick up the phone and order something and expect for it to show up exactly when and where you need it to in the shape that you want it to be. And that's something that is not always easy to work with, but it's something that I'm committed to doing. And if you also choose in your careers and in your career path, wherever that takes you, to source like that, you have to be very flexible and adaptable and be able to adjust. And doing a menu like this, you take those things into consideration. So we picked some root vegetables. We're getting into the fall. We still have the end of the summer stuff is really starting to fade out, but we still have a lot of pickled things. We even got to see corn and tomatoes are lasted up until last week, you know, which doesn't always happen. But now we're getting a lot of root veggies in. Apples are really popping right now, so we're going to feature those today. Cranberries, which are one of my favorite New England ingredients to use. We're going to see those as well. And of course, pumpkins. Everyone thinks apples and pumpkins when we think the fall. So we ready to go? You ready? Let's do it. All right. So we're going to start with a soup. Soup sounds something simple. One of the things that I love to do when we're cooking is to just highlight simplicity. Simplicity to me, done well, is so much more refined and so much more breathtaking than dishes and food that is overly adorned or super busy. It's harder to make one ingredient or 2 or 3 ingredients shine on a plate and blow somebody away or really make it breathtaking than it is to put 15, 20 things on a plate and have it look more like abstract art. You know, things hide when there's too much on the plate. So I take something as simple as turnips and onions, and we've made this beautiful soup today. So this is a method that we use a lot. When people cook at home, and everyone's used to having soup, everyone's had a lot of soup, but one thing that they don't always achieve that we can do in a professional kitchen is the textures that we achieve, either through process or through not having Vitamixes or chinois or fine sifters or mandolins or just the knife skills that we have, or the time and the equipment to get the textures that we need. So we've taken something really simple like a soup, and we're going to refine it. We're going to make it really smooth and velvety. And that's one of the first things that I like people to have when they come in, especially when the weather starts to dip down, because it's really enriching and warming. So when we think about what I'm trying to achieve with a food, we apply it to the whole menu and not just the one dish, because I want there to be harmony and balance from course to course. So we start with the first thing. I want it to be enriching, warming. I want there to be just this real beautiful texture that just kind of pulls them in and sucks them in and gets them started. So that being said, we got a nice stock pot. We're going to get it warm. This is going to be a soup that comes out white, so we don't want to caramelize or brown our onions. We're going to start with just some julienne sweet onions. And one thing, what does salt do? Does anybody know what salt does to food? That's right, it takes moisture out. So when we're trying to brown something, we won't add the salt right away because we want to get that color. We want that direct heat in the contact. When I'm trying to sweat something, like in this application, I want the soup to come out white. I don't want the onions to get too dark a color. We're going to add some salt in the beginning, and it's going to pull out a little bit of the natural moisture in the onions, which is going to help them to steam and sweat and not get that dark color that they get when they brown up. One of the most important things you can do is to understand the properties of the food that you're working with, and what works for some reasons and why you would do something in some circumstances is exactly why you wouldn't do it, and vice versa. So if you understand those things, it'll really help you to navigate. Now we've got some whole peeled garlic. This is a pureed soup, so it's really great for time when you don't have a lot of time, or if you're trying to accomplish a lot with few prep hours. Something like this is very helpful because you don't have to spend a lot of time on your finished cuts because it's going to get pureed. The one thing I would say is, although they don't have to be squared off, thanks, Chef. Although they don't have to be squared off and perfectly uniform, you do want them to cook at the same time, so you would want them to be slightly or relatively the same shape or thickness. You guys smell that yet? No? Yeah? Good. Pulling you in a little bit. So we start with onions and garlic. In this particular application, it looked like a lot of garlic. I'm not going to measure as we go just for pacing. You guys have all got recipes there that I've put together. They're just frameworks for you to use, but feel free to ask questions. You can use those amounts. I'm just going to go off the cuff here and be basing on those same ratios as we go. So we start with onions. We get those sweating. We go in with a little whole peeled garlic. I like to use whole peeled garlic for this as opposed to chopped or minced garlic because it releases a little bit slower and cooks a little bit with a little bit less pungency and a little bit more well-rounded flavor in this particular application. Actually, we're going to wait here. Once this is going, you guys get those onions and garlic going. We're going to go with some white wine. Now, why do we add wine to food? Does anybody have any idea? Don't all shout out at once. No. Flavor is one. There's another reason. What's that? To glazing, yep. But what does it have? What are the properties that wine has? It's got a lot of acid. It brings a lot of vibrancy. It cuts through fat. It adds brightness. You're going to hear me talk a lot about acid when we talk about food and we talk about seasoning and cooking. For me, the most important thing is that there's balance in everything. You'll hear me reference balance a lot. Balance of flavors, balance of textures. And one thing that we do is we add a lot of acidity in our food because it makes things bright and vibrant. It cuts the fat, so is one of the terms that we use a lot. On your palate, when you eat something rich or something with either added fat or its own fat on it, when we get to the proteins, it has a tendency to sit on your palate, and using acidity to help brighten up the flavors, lift them up a little bit. It also makes those flavors, those richness, wash away so that your mouth doesn't get tired and everything stays really exciting and you're ready for that next bite. The best analogy that I like to use when I'm teaching people about that is, who's had Alfredo sauce? Who's had really bad Alfredo sauce? Like 9 times out of 10, you have it, and it can be really, really bad. And it's not that the ingredients are always bad, it's just that it's usually made and it's not balanced. There's not enough acid in there. You take 2 bites and you're full, right? It's like super rich, it coats your mouth. But if you just add a little bit of acid in there, a lot of times it'll be a lot more vibrant and bright, and it'll be something that you can eat a little bit more of. So we're gonna let this go. When we add wine, we talked with Chloe yesterday, we were talking about using alcohol in food, and there's a lot of different ways to do it, and 2 primary, I would say we use it to finish, and in that case we use small amounts, and we actually want a little bit of the strength or the harshness of the alcohol for flavor. You see that in a lot of pastries and cakes that we're dressing or just lightly marinating or finishing desserts with. When we're cooking savory dishes like this and adding it into a sauce, you'll see it when we do the cider reduction for our pork and also for the soup. We don't really want the alcohol in it. We want the acid and we want the base flavor of the wine or the spirit. So what we have to do is we have to burn that alcohol off before we add any other liquid to it. So now it's releasing some beautiful aromas, but what's also happening is the alcohol is burning off, and that's going to leave us with the wonderful base flavor of the white wine and all the acid without the harsh aftertaste of alcohol. If you taste a soup that has wine in it and it tastes great, but it has like a bitter, astringent aftertaste, a lot of time that's from people adding the wine and the stock at the same time, or adding the wine and the vegetables and not letting that wine cook off before they do that. So that's just a little trick for that. Once it's come to a simmer and it's reduced a little bit, then we're going to add our turnips that Chloe has diced up so wonderfully. Going to hand me the stock, Chloe? Yep. Now this is great. When we do at the restaurant, I like to use chicken stock. I like to use meat stocks and fish stocks, but we also have a great deal of vegetarians that come in, both vegans, vegetarians, people that eat meat and fish as well, but don't like to have a lot of vegetables and a lot of plant-based dishes, as well. So I try to not always use meat and seafood stocks in every dish that we're making. So while protein would be wonderful for this, and you can do that, especially if you're doing it at home, or if you're gonna do this as a base this would be a great puree to use to put some crispy bacon or some pork belly or some fried oysters in on the top of, you getting hungry yet or no? All right, good. It's part of my evil plan. No, I'm just kidding. While you could do that, it's also nice for me. A lot of times I'll use vegetable stock. We'll make a really nice vegetable stock, or we'll use water in some things when we want to keep it pristine and really showcase just that one flavor profile. But more times than not, I'll use vegetable stock in this application. And with the stock, we're going to add just enough to cover. you go. And then we're just going to turn it right up and let it cook away. At this point, we're just going to let it simmer until everything is completely tender. Okay, once everything is completely tender, which we'll let happen, but it's going to take a little while, we're going to add our heavy cream. Okay, I like to finish. You don't have to finish these soups with cream. You can make this vegan, but it's really nice to finish it with a little bit of cream. I like to finish with fats. I think when you're talking about texture and keeping things a little bit on the healthier side, finishing with the fat as opposed to cooking with it throughout the whole process, especially in something like this, can keep things a little bit lighter and still preserve the texture of the fat when you're on the palate with the finished product. Also with cream, now we want this finished soup to be white. I don't know if you guys, I don't know if anybody can see any of this out there, but the soup is beautiful. We've got some TV magic right here. I just made this soup happen right now. This is, the finished product is beautiful and white, and one of the reasons that we did that, besides the sweating in the beginning, is we'll wait till the soup is completely tender before we add the cream. And then we'll add the cream, bring it up to a simmer. We'll adjust the seasoning a little bit, and then we're going to puree it. So what we do, one of our best tools that we can use in the kitchen is a blender. Vitamix or anything in that vein of a really high-powered blender. They're just great tools for the kitchen. You know, I'll take something simple like that over, you know, anything gadgety or techie any day. This is what we call a workhorse piece of equipment that is just used for so many different applications and can really, really help you to make wonderful textures and really help to speed things up, as well as make really beautiful finished product. So what we do is we're going to finish this. We add the heavy cream. We'll cook it again till everything's come up to a simmer, nice and tender. Then we're going to take it. We put it in the Vitamix. We blitz it a few times till it's really nice and smooth. And then we're going to pass it through, again, depending on what kind of equipment you have, how refined you want your dinner to be, and how much time you have. I find chinois is great, a nice thin one. It's a little tougher. It takes a little bit longer to get it through, but the texture is absolutely beautiful. It's just like velvet. If you want things to look a little bit more rustic, or if you don't have them, if you have a good blender, you don't necessarily have to strain it. But I like to strain the soups and the sauces because I find it really refines the texture a little bit. One of the things that we're going to talk about next is garnishing the soup. We've got a beautiful, simple soup, and now what do we do to present it? Okay, one of the things that we like to do is make creme fraiche at the restaurant. Creme fraiche is, does anyone know what creme fraiche is? Yes? No? Are you guys falling asleep already? Come on. Creme fraiche. Anybody? 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 Raise your hand. Anybody? Creme fraiche is a French sour cream. Okay, we make this. I used to buy it for about $15 to $20 a container, and then I learned how to make it, and now it's a lot. It's more fun. It's a lot less expensive. It's something that is so easy to make, and you just get a beautiful, beautiful finished product. So I've referenced that in the recipes. This is something that you can do at home. It's just heavy cream and buttermilk. We put them together in the ratios that I believe that I've referenced in the recipe. We let them sit out, and the cultures in the buttermilk help to sour the cream. It thickens up. We give it a good shake once or twice, and then we refrigerate it, and then by the time it's ice cold, it's nice and thick like this, and it's the best sour cream you've ever had. We use this for dessert. We make creme fraiche ice cream at work. We use it to finish some sauces for meat dishes, but most usually and noticeably, I love to finish and garnish soups with it because it's just really vibrant and pungent, and it's got a beautiful tang to it. And when you take a rich dish like this that's made with cream and earthy vegetables, it just adds a vibrancy to the finished product. So are we going to do the samples? Ready to pass? Absolutely. So I'll do the finished plate right now, or good to go? Take that as a yes, I guess. So we have the finished plate. We're going to let this soup simmer, and if it's ready in time, we'll go and I'll show you guys how to puree it later, but I'm going to keep this moving for pacing. Most important thing you can do, and one thing I didn't talk about that I will before I plate this up, is seasoning and finishing. Always taste everything. I ask my cooks all the time. I make them show every dish to me or to my sous chef that we can taste it. And it's not just to critique them or to tear them down. You have to train your palate. I want to know, as the chef, I want to make sure that everything is up to the standard and the level that I want it to be at before I send it out into the dining room. But also for their development and for their understanding, I really want to make sure that they are on the same page as I am. And the only way that they're going to get that way is if we constantly taste, always, always taste. I tell them at the end of the shift, if you're hungry, you didn't do your job, because you should be tasting your mise en place. I don't want them sitting down on a milk crate going to town on a 6-pan or anything like that, but at the same time, they should be tasting everything. You should always taste. The more experiences that you have, taste memory experiences that you have, the more second nature it becomes. More you know. As soon as something touches your tongue, you know it needs this, it needs that. You'll get it to the point where you're like, I need a couple more drops of lemon juice, it needs a pinch more salt, it needs a dash more white pepper, a little bit of vinegar, things like that. And the only way you're going to get there is if you're constantly tasting and tasting and tasting. With something like this, I use a lot of black pepper. We use a lot of fresh herbs, we use a lot of black pepper at the restaurant. But for something like this, we would definitely use white pepper, because what we're looking for is a beautiful, finished, white, pristine product. So we'll use a fine ground white pepper that will pulverize in a spice mill. White pepper is great. It's very strong. Like most spices, it can be too pungent and can be harsh if you use it in excess or not balanced ratios, but it adds a really nice texture, not texture, but a really nice spice to it. Lemon juice, we'll finish with lemon juice, and we'll also finish with extra virgin olive oil a lot. So for pickup or for plating, when we do this, we just fire the soup, and it's just got a really, really nice texture. One of the things that you can do, and that we do at the restaurant, is we finish with a lot of olive oils. I like to keep this nice and smooth, so we'll finish it with the oil right on the top. But if you did have a vegan, or you had to cook for vegans, what you can use at the end when you puree it, you can also emulsify it and add olive oil. Roasted garlic puree is another great way to achieve the texture of an animal fat without actually putting a fat in there or an animal fat in there. But the cream is really nice too. So we'll take that. This is a little full, so I don't know if we're going to get a good quenelle in there, but we're just going to do a little dollop. Right in the middle. Now, I like to leave it like that so that the guests, the first thing they're going to do when they see that is they're going to take their spoon and swirl it around. And the creme fraiche is served cold. So again, we'll keep the soup hot. We'll always warm the plate. And then we'll put the cold creme fraiche right in the middle. I'll take a little bit of olive oil. Finish the top like that. And then for me, what I like to do is, we can't use a lot of herbs in this dish. We'll put some in the vegetable stock when we make the vegetable stock. But we'll finish it and garnish it with some fried sage, which I love. One of my least favorite things to do, how many people have gone out and had something and ordered a steak somewhere, or ordered a dish and it's come out with an entire rosemary tree on the top of it? Who's seen that? And hopefully I'm not insulting anyone. I'm sure I was guilty of it too on a couple of my maybe freshman and sophomore year plate ups when I was doing garnishing and whatnot. But I really firmly believe that everything on the plate should be edible. Unless it's a bone that's in the fish, or unless it's a vessel that you're cooking in. Any food that we put on there should be edible. It should make sense in the dish. It should either complement the flavors that are in the dish, or it should contrast them in a very complementary way. But whatever it is on the plate, it should make sense. And one of the things that doesn't make sense is taking some of the harsher or more savory herbs and throwing them raw in large quantities on the plate, especially if they have a strong or woody stem. So how can we not do that? How can we take that harshness out and still be able to do it? One of the ways that we like to do it at the restaurant is we'll fry them. It's not rocket science, but it's science, and it's really beautiful when you do it right. We take some oil, we heat it just before smoking, so it's really hot. You're almost making a makeshift fryer, and then we just simply fry it until all the water content is out, and you'll see them crisp up. And we pull them out with a little basket, and then we salt them heavily with kosher salt on a paper towel, and they're beautiful all throughout service. They stay nice and crisp, and it makes it almost like a potato chip, but more importantly, it makes it so that it's not too pungent to eat, and that it makes sense flavor-wise and texture. It adds a little crunch and a little texture to the dish without adding a starch or carbohydrate or anything really heavy, but it gives you a little bit of crunch on the dish. And I have extra up here for you guys to try later. We're just gonna use them as garnishes or what. So you guys try the soup. How is it? Question? It's actually all three. It's all three. You know, I really very rarely, although I want the plates to look good because I don't care what anybody says, we all judge books by the cover, okay? You shouldn't stay that way, but you have first impressions, and that's, our eyes are usually, thankfully we have an open kitchen, so sometimes smell is the first sense that you use, but more times than not, when the dish comes to the table, the first thing you do is you see it. So we want it to be beautiful, but I don't want it to be overly manicured, and I don't want things to be on the dish that don't make sense. So the olive oil is there, yes, for a nice design, but more importantly, we use a really high quality extra virgin olive oil with that little bit of bitterness, that rich olive flavor, because it adds flavor and it adds a little bit of texture to the dish. It's a good question.
Do you have a favorite olive oil?
Good question.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. Do I have a favorite olive oil? You know, not really. I mean, I think for me, we use a lot of Davina at the restaurant because it's accessible. It's high quality, but it's also affordable enough for me to use a lot of it. There's some really beautiful boutique olive oils out there, and that's one of there's so much nuance and difference between them, and there's some that are really harsh, there's some that are sweet, there's some that are pungent and bitter. As long as it's made well and it makes sense, you know, I don't think that there's one that's better than another for me. But it's just a matter of taste and trial for me. But that's a good question. Anybody else? Questions on the soup before we move on? No? Yeah. Really quickly, I just want to show you this before we move on to this. Things are simmering. We're just going to add some heavy cream. This is where I would add the heavy cream. They're not quite tender yet, but they're getting really close. And that's it. We would add the heavy cream, and we're going to let that simmer away until it's done. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to work on the crudo course. Who knows what crudo is? What's that? That's right. It's raw fish. Crudo, ceviche, tartare, sushi. You know, these are all, every culture, and I'm sure I'm missing a ton of other ones as well. Every culture has versions of fresh or raw product that they use. And I love all of them. One of the things that I really, really like to do, besides ceviche, which I love, when we started working with really, really fresh local seafood, I was breaking the stuff down, and I'm like, this stuff is just so beautiful. I'm like, I don't even want to cook it. It just looks so amazing. I don't even want to cook it. So I didn't. I'm like, let's try it tonight. We'll serve it raw and see how it goes. I know we're not I try not to go, although we pull from cultures and lots of different cultures and backgrounds in our cooking style, the theme or the idea of the restaurant, I want it to be harmonious and not to be all over the map. You know, we won't do one Japanese dish or one Italian dish or one French dish or one German dish. I want it all to be contemporary New England, contemporary modern American. But of course, there's a lot of French and a lot of Italian influence to that stuff. So I wouldn't call it sushi. The crudo style is something that I've found is just a beautiful, beautiful way to highlight fresh, wonderful fish. So I'm going to show you guys how to break down a flatfish. Breaking down fish is one of my favorite things to do at the restaurant. We do a ton of it. We are predominantly a whole animal restaurant, and by that I mean I would say about 85 to 95% at any given time of the proteins that we use come from whole animals that we bring into the restaurant, which is not easy. It's a lot of hard work. It sounds like a beautiful idea, but it is a lot of work and a lot of labor. But it's, again, something that I'm really committed to and something that I really enjoy to do. How many people have broken down flatfish before? Anybody? Anybody? Good. There's a few of you out there. You want to hold it up? Do you want to kiss it? Come on. Oh, there you go. She's really earning that scholarship today. You might have to up the ante after today. Give her a hand. Come on, give her a hand. Oh, that's good. Yeah. Okay, we're gonna start buzzing along here. When we have, what's that? Yes, sure, absolutely. We'll get rid of that. Yeah. Let's move this over. What's that? Yes. Yep, I got you. Why don't we move this as well, Chef?
Okay.
You can take that in the back. Bill, you want to take that soup in the back, or just to get it out of the way? We don't really need it. No. Can you see now? Is that a little better? Is this baby in the way over here? Can you guys see over there? I'm sorry if you guys are. I didn't even realize I was on TV. God. This is great. After this, everything's going to move along pretty quickly. This is a beautiful dish. I want you guys to see this. This is fun. It's not hard to do this. It's labor and time consuming, but it's something that you can definitely do. And if you make a few wrong cuts, it's okay. That's how we learn. So one of the things that I'm very passionate about is sourcing. One of the things in Rhode Island that we've had in across the country that we have a hard time sourcing like we do with fresh produce is fish, getting it directly from the fishermen. So that's something that I've been working on. We're part of a program called Trace and Trust, which started here in Rhode Island, which deals with getting the fish directly from the fishermen to the kitchen. So our first incision is right down the middle. There's a natural seam. With a flatfish, we have 4 fillets. Two on the top and 2 on the bottom. When you come in, we have the roe sack right here. We have this beautiful, beautiful fillet of fish. Okay, everybody see that? It's really, really nice. Now you can take this, some of my friends do pâtés with this. You can bread these, do a little fish roe on toast. There's all kinds of things that you can do. Their livers are in here. The organs are in there. If you choose to use it, you can. If you don't, you can always discard it. We make fish stock with them, with the bodies. So we take that first fillet off. There's lots of different styles and different methods of breaking down, and not all of them, there's not necessarily a matter of right and wrong. You have to find and try the techniques that work for you and work for the application that you're trying to use them in. What I try to do is always think about the finished result. What do I want on the plate? What do I want to put on the plate, and what do I want it to look like? And then I try to go backwards from there and find a method or a style. Other than my meat cutting class here at Johnson & Wales, I wasn't trained formally as a butcher, but at this point, I've done a lot of butchering and a lot of cutting up. We do about 100 to 200 pounds of whole fish every week. We get a whole pig every 2 weeks. We get a half a cow every 3 to 6 weeks. We get a whole lamb usually once a month. We also get whole chickens, about 30 to 40 every week. So there's a lot of butchering that goes on at our shop. So you have this right here. Okay, there's a spine that goes right down the middle, and that's kind of where I cut and then just peeled it off. Really, when you're filleting, you want to let your knife do the work. You use the bone as a reference and as a guide. That's why it's nice to have a knife with a little bit of flex to it. You don't want it to be too bendy, but a little bit of flex. I like the smaller knives. When I'm breaking down a bigger fish, I'll use a larger, longer knife. But for the most part, the smaller the knife that you can use for the task I like, because it gives me a little bit more control, and it's just like an extension of my hands. We'll then normally what we'll do is we'll take a spoon and we'll scrape down, as I showed Chloe yesterday, we'll scrape down the bones like they do, if you've ever seen a sushi chef break down fish, they'll scrape down the bones and take all that meat, that little pulp that goes in there, and we'll save that, and we'll make fish cakes, we'll make chowder, we'll make fish sausage, seafood sausage. One of the things that you have to do if you want to be successful and keep your restaurant open and keep the doors open is be resourceful and not waste. So we try to think of applications for every product. We don't waste anything. The back side's a little bit harder because you've lost your prop up or your sockle there once you take that other fillet off. But it's the same technique. Just come in. You have the organ side of the fillet, which you have to cut right over here because it's all organs. I try not to pierce the heart if I can. Flatfish are one of the few fish that will break down without taking the organs out first. And if you do pierce the heart and it does start to bleed, then you just want to rinse it off. It's not going to be harmful. It just discolors the fillet. How many of these did you break down yesterday?
One whole one.
You did a good job, though. So the fish that you guys are going to sample, or have they eaten it yet or no? Have they tried the crudo yet? No, not right. Great. The fish that you guys are about to try, Chloe broke that down. So if it's not good, it's her fault. No, I'm just kidding. And then we just peel off the other fillet the same way. When you get up to the head, it gets a little bit tricky. But flatfish are really, really fun and simple to break down. We'll take that. We'll remove the roe. And that's it. We're left with a beautiful fillet. Okay? You guys ready? Can you guys do that now? All right, good. Hey, how are you? Good.
Hey, I had a question. You talked a little bit about sourcing your seafood directly from fish.
Yes.
One of your goals. I was wondering if you could explain to us the benefit of trying to source it directly from fish, or why you want to do that as opposed to.
Absolutely. We can actually take this. He asked a great question about sourcing seafood. Can I get another cutting board too? About sourcing seafood and why it's important. You know, for all food, I feel it's important for us to know where it comes from. You have to have as a chef and as a cook, we have a responsibility to our guests to know the integrity of something and the product and where it's come from and the wholesomeness of it, what's gone into it, because people want to know that and they deserve they have the right to know where it's come from and what's gone into it. With fish, above all else, with other proteins, freshness is just the absolute epitome of importance. And one of the things that stops us from doing that, even if we're buying great fish, is the process of the time commitment that it takes when people get the fish, they catch the fish, they bring it in, and then they bring it to the docks. Then they have to bring it to the market, and then it gets bought at auction, and then it goes to a wholesaler or a distributor, and then you order it as a chef, and then it comes to you. And now, if those aren't day boats, and by day boats I mean they go out one day and they come right back the same day. A lot of boats aren't day boats, and they go out for days at a time. So the fish that you could be eating could be 5, 6, 7 days old, which doesn't make it bad, but it doesn't make it as fresh as it could be. And one of the things that I've tried to do is take a stance at making these relationships with these fishermen so that I can get the fish directly the day of or the day after it's come out of the water. And what that does is it puts the time on my side so that I have time to process it and still keep this stuff super vibrant and super fresh. Does that answer your question? Does that help at all? But I also felt, for me, we were making so much segue or headway really in sourcing for produce with our farmers over the last 10 years. The landscape of sourcing has changed so much. So we're just going to remove the fin. I'm just going to kind of go back and forth from this to the questions. I hope you guys don't mind. And it didn't make sense to me that I know everybody that made, grew, or farmed or harvested all my meats and all my produce, but I couldn't make that same connection with the fishermen. So that's what kind of drove me to push the envelope with that and create those direct connections with the fishermen. So with crudo, again, it depends. If you could make this as a summer entree, it's really nice, something fresh and vibrant in the summertime. In the winter or other times, I love to use it as a first course. So it really depends on what you want to do as far as shapes. Some people like to square the stuff off and then discard the trim. I usually will cut it into strips depending on the size of the fillet and use that in strips. Again, I don't like to cut it too thin because I feel like you lose the texture of the fish, and I really want you to taste that fish. So I have some sub recipes in this crudo dish that I wanted to share with you guys. This is a super simple recipe, but there's a few things that we do ahead of time. Pickled mustard seeds, pickled raisins, or marinated raisins really, and then pickled cranberries, which I'm really, really happy with, and I love to talk about that as well. But this dish is all about vibrance and freshness. We just hit your palate with something rich and warm. Now we go to the next course. I want to wake it up. I want it to be vibrant and fresh and crisp. Okay, so we take this. I'm gonna grab a metal bowl. We have the fish right here. We're gonna just marinate. Grab me the apples. Oh, actually, the apple's right here in front of me. I hate when the things are hiding right in front of my face. That happens a lot. Beautiful. We're just going to do that separately. Gorgeous. Yes? Well, that's a great question. Flounder is something that's very, very seasonal and available here in New England, especially in Rhode Island. We have fluke. We have what they call summer flounder. There's winter flounder. There's yellowtail, and they're all available here. It's a beautiful fish. We're not 100% organic or sustainable at the restaurant, but we try to move towards that goal every day. And one of the ways that we do that is by trying to source from the fishermen. I talk to them and I say, what's available? What do you have? What's in season? What's a good idea for me to use? And then we try it. So we tried a lot of different things. So we're gonna wait. Now that we're just about to plate this, we're gonna take our honey clove vinaigrette and we're gonna dress this right at the last minute. Again, if you let it sit in the dressing, it's not gonna go bad, but then it becomes more of a ceviche where the acid starts to cook the fish, which is still delicious. And sometimes people, if you don't think that they're gonna be willing or ready to eat, can I have another cutting board? If you don't think they're going to be willing or ready to eat raw fish, you can let it sit in the dressing, and it will cook. So we have that going right there. We're just going to take a little bit of Honeycrisp apple. Okay, this is one of my favorite apples. Being in New England and growing up, I grew up in Smithfield, in a small part. In Rhode Island, we have 1,000 names for every town, and every town has a subtown, and every subtown has sub-villages, and we still keep those. I grew up in the Greenville or Apple Valley part of Smithfield, Rhode Island, and there was about 5 apple orchards around when I was a kid there. We had an apple tree in my backyard. So apples, to me, are just, they're an important part of where I came from, and they're just a great texture and flavor for your food, and not just sweet food and not just desserts. So we're going to take this. We're going to take some of our pickled mustard seeds. By pickling the mustard seeds, we made them tender. What's really important, I know I have the recipe there for you guys to look at, but what's important to know is that you don't want to cook them on high heat because they'll get bitter, okay? So you cook them low and slow. We have some pickled raisins, which we just really, they're basically more like marinated in vinegar. Rice wine vinegar is nice, cider vinegar is great, and we're just going to toss that up. I like to use a little bit of black pepper in this. It gives some nice color and also just the coarse texture. We've got some beautiful pea greens and field greens here that we're gonna use. Let's get this finished plate. And we have our pickled cranberries. Now, can you guys all see these cranberries from over there on the screen or whatnot? Cranberries to me, again, like apple, it doesn't get any more New England than that. But what's important about a cranberry is that you can't eat them raw because they're just so hard. Well, you could eat them raw, but they're not really pleasant. They're very pungent. They're very sour. They kind of fill your whole mouth with this sour flavor. So what we'll do is usually cook them, but then what happens is you lose the beauty of the fresh whole cranberry because the skins separate, the texture gets mushy, and they taste great, but they don't look as beautiful as they did when they're raw. So one of the things that I've been trying to do over the last few years is to get the best of both worlds by manipulating that texture. And one of the methods that I've decided on or kind of stumbled upon was curing them. So we'll cure them in salt and then we'll pickle them. And by doing that, what's happened is we take out some of the sourness and some of the bitterness, and then we pickle them. We pour the hot liquid right over the top. And what it does is it really, really makes them a beautiful flavor without the sourness. You're still getting the tart, beautiful cranberry flavor, but it doesn't have that pungent, inedible sour flavor that you can get with cranberries. So we're just going to dance this on the plate, just for some color and some texture. You don't have to use a lot of leaf lettuce. Thank you, Chef. We're going to put a little bit of the pickled mustard seeds and apples. This is great with pears also. Raisins, I use a lot of raisins in my cooking. It's one of those things that you can keep in the pantry all year round. And it's kind of what I like to refer to as a sleeper ingredient. You know, we just kind of think of it as a snack when you're a kid or something in really disgusting bread pudding that nobody wants to eat. But they're beautiful. You know, they're grapes. Grapes are the foundation, one of those foundation components that we use for wine and so many other things that we use, vinegars and whatnot. So raisins are a lot of fun. By pickling them, this is we use those on our charcuterie plates. We do a lot of charcuterie plates at the restaurant. Okay, we're just gonna dance it. And you can already see the colors starting to come together on here. Normally we'll do this on a really large plate, so it's really expansive. And then we're just gonna take some fresh herbs. We have some carrot fronds here, some fresh mint, some fresh basil. Bless you. I hope it's not my cooking that made you sneeze, I hope. Next, we're going to do our pork belly dish. I'm just going to move right along because I know I'm taking up a lot of time. So, I want to get the carrots for the puree. One of the nicest things that we could do with pork belly is really just to let it sing on the plate and really adorn it very limited. So what we do is we got some beautiful root vegetables, carrots. Sounds simple, sounds easy, but they're fresh from the farm. They're full of flavor. So what we do is we take these carrots. Can I have a sauce pot too, Chloe? We take these carrots, okay? We put them in a pot. Little heavy cream, little salt, little pepper. I like to use turmeric. Is everyone familiar with turmeric? It's used in a lot of different things, like they use bad turmeric, or not bad, but just cheap turmeric that doesn't have a lot of flavor, and they use that usually for coloring because it's cheaper than saffron. It doesn't, it doesn't have the flavor of annatto. So you'll see it in a lot of things, yellow mustard. It's also in the ginger family. And if you use good turmeric, it does add a nice flavor to what you're doing. But it's great with any of the beta-carotene vegetables because it helps to keep that color going, as well as add a base flavor of a softer ginger flavor. So what we do is we're just going to put the carrots in there, okay? We take, can I have that heavy cream back? Okay. We're going to take some water, some heavy cream. We do a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper, the turmeric, cover it, and let it cook till tender. Very similar with the soup, except this is just thicker, a lot thicker. We're not looking for something that you're going to eat 8 to 10 ounces of. You're going to have 1, 2, 3 ounces of this. So we want it to be a little tighter and a little bit less loose. We'll cover it like that. When I first started this process, I would use straight heavy cream, but what I found is the fat, you can't reduce fat. You can only reduce water. So it will get to a certain point and it will stop reducing, and you'll just be left with something that's not as tight. It'll be greasy and fatty. So what we'll do is we'll use half water, half heavy cream, and we'll cook it down. That way we can get the carrots tender and then reduce all that water and have just the right amount of fat in for our finished product. One thing you can do, by the miracle of TV magic, we have Chef was making this. You guys didn't even see he was making that. We have a finished product right here, our carrot puree. It's super, super thick but smooth, and that's important. We're gonna put that on the plate in just a minute. Anybody have any questions on the carrot puree? Pretty basic, simple an idea, but again, it's part of a bigger dish or part of a bigger landscape of the dish. Root veggies, they're so beautiful. They're so underutilized. Yes?
I just wondered if the more acidic vegetables, like tomato, summer vegetables, would work with puree. I know it wouldn't puree as well, but...
Well, a lot of times, that's a good question. You can do those with the acidic vegetables. Tomato is going to change its color a lot as you cook it down and become more like a tomato paste, but you absolutely can do that as well. A lot of times with the tomato paste, we will... or with the tomatoes, they're so beautiful. I always end up putting some version of a tomato soup or a tomato sauce. We do a lot of ratatouilles and ragouts with the tomatoes in when they're in season. But we've made tomato purees as well to paint the plate with that as well. And at that point, we're just looking for just that 1 or 2 ounces of texture and color to add to the plate. Root veggies, we've got carrots, we've got golden carrots, we've got purple carrots, we've got some parsnip, some rutabaga, some radishes, some beets. These are gorgeous. You can use whatever you want. I think I listed carrots in there, squash in there. You can use sweet potatoes. Sky's the limit with this. What I think is just nice is that you get a nice variety of colors and textures. Very basic. We've cut them up. Little olive oil, salt and pepper in the oven just until they're done. I like to slow roast them so that you can get, especially if they're smaller, so that they don't dry up and get dehydrated, and they still have retain their moisture and their texture before they're all dried up into nothing. But you can cook them. I stayed away from putting a lot of temperatures on the recipes because it really depends on your oven. You always want to know what you're looking for in a recipe, not necessarily how long to cook it for and what temperature to cook it at. Those are just the tools and just references. You really, as a cook, you need to understand what you're looking for and what you want as a finished product, and then figure out how to get there. Pork belly. This is where bacon comes from. In the last few years, it's really starting to get a lot of its attention as non-bacon, but as a roasted meat, something that we can eat more than just a thin slice of. When we cure it or make bacon, or even with the jowls, we make guanciale or pancetta, or there's a lot of different versions of bacon that we can make, or dry cured sausage. it's really salty, so you have to cut it super thin. You can only have it more as a condiment or very, very thin. When we take a roasted pork belly, it's the best of both worlds. You get the texture of those cuts, but we've seasoned it in a way that you can eat more of it, and you can eat larger pieces of it, and it eats more like a center of the plate meat. So we had the whole belly. We cut it into quarters. We remove the skin. Just for pacing, I'm not gonna do this right now. I'm just gonna keep moving along. But really, all you do is you're taking your fillet knife. If you want to make chicharrones, which we do at the restaurant, or pork rinds, fried pork rinds, which are great for our charcuterie plate. We put them out at the bar sometimes. I'll take it off in one sheet, which is a little bit more difficult because you lose some of the fat from the top of the fat cap, but it is possible. You just have to go slow. It's kind of like the opposite of skinning a fish, just upside down. If I don't need to make pork rinds, like if we have a lot of pork rinds dehydrated and ready to go, and I'm just going to use it for sauce, I'll just take it off in ribbons and in shreds, like a little piece at a time, almost as if you're removing silver skin. And what that'll do is it'll make sure that I leave a lot more of the fat on the actual pork belly, and then I'll take all those bits and pieces and make my stocks and sauces with those. There's a lot of collagen, a lot of flavor in the skin to be had. As long as you brown it up, it makes a really, really nice addition to your stock and sauce. So that's your pork belly. This is from the flat side. It tapers down a little bit, down where the skirts and the flanks are on the animal. So what we'll do is I'll cut them into sections and then cure them separately. If there's a really, really thin side, I will fold it over on itself and truss it. Once we cook the pork belly, or we take the pork belly, we brine it, okay? And by brine, does everyone know what a brine is? Brine is something simple. Again, we're not reinventing the wheel here, but it's a really solid technique to use when you're working with meats. And it really adds a lot of flavor. It works by science. It's osmosis. The sugar and the salt permeate. They exchange into the cell walls on a cellular level, and they make the meat or whatever you're brining more flavorful, make it more moist. It's a lot more forgiving when you cook it. It's a lot harder to dry something out or to overcook something when it's brined, but it really adds a beautiful, beautiful flavor to it. So what we've done, I take the pork belly, and Chloe helped me with this yesterday with the brine. We made a brine. There's a recipe in there for it. I can talk about that more later, but I'm going to keep going. We brine this for about 6 to 8 hours, okay, is the ideal if you're going to do a full strength brine. If you go longer than that, you get closer to a bacon flavor. I'll often do a half strength brine, which is twice the amount of water than the normal ratio. And what that does is it allows me to leave it in the brine overnight, which helps to make it a little bit more tender, a little bit more moist. That's something I do with a lot of our whole chickens and with our pork belly. So we take the pork belly, we've taken the skin off, we've scored the top for even cooking, and also so it doesn't tighten up and change shape. And then we brined it. Now we've taken it out of the brine. We're going to pat it dry in just a little bit of olive oil, a little black pepper. You don't want to salt it too much if you've left it in the brine because it could get over salted at that point. I'd rather finish with a salt than if it needs more. So we take the pork, we're going to dry roast it, okay? We put it in the oven about 400 degrees just till it gets golden brown on the outside on a roasting rack, so you get nice even heat. We pull it out, we take it off the roasting rack, we turn the oven down, and we cover it with pork stock. If you don't have pork stock, you can use chicken stock. You can use beef stock, but beef is a more strong, pungent flavor, so it starts to taste more like beef than it does like pork. Having something high in protein, though, with a little bit more gelatin in it is nice because it does add a little bit more flavor to the pork stock. So a reduced pork stock or reduced chicken stock is ideal. Once we've covered it, we put it back in the oven. We're going to let it cook until it's tender. Now this took about two hours or so at a low temperature. Again, it really depends on the temperature of your oven, what you're really looking for. And it also depends on the thickness of your pork belly as well. What you're looking for is just for the knife or a fork or a tester just to pierce it. We want a little bit of resistance. We don't want it to fall apart like an overly braised meat, but we want it to be tender. We don't want it to be, you'll see once it hits a point where you know, with a roasted meat, it's very, very tight, and then you just see that it hits a point where it starts to relax a little bit, and that's what we're looking for. Once that comes out, lift it out of the liquid. I take 2 hotel pans. You want to get your best hotel pan that you have, one that hasn't been put through the ringer, that has dents and looks like the surface of the moon or Swiss cheese, because the flatness is what's really going to help us. It's going to be our friend for this, okay? We take a flat hotel pan. We take a piece of parchment. We take the hot pork belly. Now you have to be careful. It's braised, it's soft, it's tender. We're going to pick it up and we're going to lay it on there, and then we're going to put another piece of baking parchment over the top. Get another nice flat hotel pan, preferably the same thickness, because what we want to do is gently, not squish it, but gently hit the surface area of it so that we can press it down, okay? And then we're going to put the other pan on top of the pork, and then we're going to weight it gently. Now, it has to be a nice, firm pressure. You have to use your judgment on this. Sometimes, you know, we've got a great kitchen. We've got about 15 or 16 guys and girls in the kitchen, about half girls, half guys. Sometimes some of the guys put, you know, too much weight on the top of it, and then the pork starts squirting out the sides, and I have to yell at them. But what you want to do is you want to put just enough pressure that it's evenly pressed down. You want to make sure that that weight is there, because that weight is going to give you your even texture. So this is our finished product. We'll unveil the finished product. You saw what it looked like raw. This is what it looks like when it's done. Okay, it's really, really beautiful. It's like this giant piece of delicious roasted bacon. So now we're going to take that. Again, it's not as salty as bacon, but it is still rich. You know, so we want to think about portion. This is a 4-course or 5-course meal. We're not trying to. We're using rich flavors here. This dish is really about richness, but we want to use it in balance. Okay, there's only so much. You don't want to. Too much of a good thing is too much of something still, and you really want to remember that. I know, like, I get excited about pork belly. When I used to first do these, I would do ginormous portions of them, and you know, and it's like really delicious, but people feel bad and they want to eat everything on the plate, and then they're overstuffed. And that's something that's important to remember, is your protein size, especially when you have something fatty or rich like a pork belly. Too much of it is going to ruin their meal, even if it tastes good. And we had a question in the back?
Yeah, does pressing down the pork belly do anything else besides the dish?
Say that again. Pressing.
With pressing the pork belly, you said it was pretty useful to have, you know, texture. Does it do anything else for the pork with the dish?
Well, it's definitely a visual, a great visual. He asked, what does pressing do other than for the final plate presentation? What else can it do? You know, for me, it is mostly about the visual, but it also makes it so when we go to reheat it and refire it to order, it's going to be more uniform. It's going to cook uniform. Okay. Is that oven on right there? Can we grab a like a quarter sheet for him? Thank you. What it's going to do is it's going to allow for even cooking and a better plate presentation. But also, if you don't, it gets kind of wavy, like that traditional look of bacon. And when you go to heat it up, you could have blisters and hot spots and pieces that cook faster than other pieces. Okay. So we're going to take this. We've got these beautiful, beautiful squares of pork, and at this point, you can have a lot of fun with this. It really depends on your finished product and how salty it is. So I'm going to test that really quick. This is the tough part when you're going to taste it. It's delicious. The salt is just about there. It will take just a little bit more, but it doesn't need much. I'm going to hit it with a little salt and pepper. Another great thing that you can do with this after this point is glazing it with a little bit of, you can use brown sugar, you can use honey. I love to do just plain honey with pork, like really good raw honey with a pork is nice. We're going to take that and we're just going to bake it in the oven. All right, don't burn it.
Okay.
Okay, good. No pressure, no pressure. Nobody's watching. One of the things you have to be careful though when you brine meats or seafoods or whatever it is that you're brining is that the sugar content in it. You want to be careful when you put it in in the oven because it's going to brown a lot quicker than something that does not have brine or sugar in it. So we're just going to wait a second for that pork before we do the finished plate. Yeah, that'd be great. And then we can do
passed out too.
beautiful. You did get some of the apple cider glaze, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Perfect. So one of the things that, the last thing I'll talk about while that piece of pork is finishing in the oven for this dish, we've talked about the pork, we've talked about the carrot puree. Now we're just going to talk about the reduction sauce. This is what I like to call a more contemporary or modern sauce making technique. Yep, I'm going to show them that too. That's the brine that we used earlier, so we'll reference that as well. A reduction sauce is a cleaner version of a demi-glace, basically a more refined, modernized version of a demi-glace. You know, I will make my stocks and sauces and really clarify them. When we make the initial stocks with the meats, we're making them from bones and the trim from all the butchering that we use. We roast them. The darker stocks, like the pork and the beef, we have a method that we use where we roast them. We don't put tomato paste on them because I don't want it to taste like tomato and beef stock. I want it to taste like beef stock. If I want it to taste like tomato stock, I'll add tomato to it at some point, or I will roast it. If it's for a tomato-based dish, I might roast it with that. But I like my stocks to be neutral and to be really intense in whatever flavor that they have. If it's lamb stock, I want it to taste like lamb. I don't want it to taste like lamb soup, or I don't want it to taste like lamb and vegetables. I want it to taste like lamb. If I make a beef stock, I want it to taste like beef, because now I can take that foundation, that base flavor, and do whatever I want with it. For reduction sauces, I'm not going to put it on the stove, but I'm just going to talk about it. Okay, this is something that you can use. You can change the alcohols in this. You can change the stocks in this. You can change the herbs that you put in this. It's really a method that I really want you guys to think about. It's fun. It's something that you can practice, and it's really, really simple to do conceptually. And it ends up with a really clean, refined, rich, and highly acidic, but a cleaner sauce. We still do some cream-based sauces and some butter-mounted sauces as well, but we do a lot of reduction sauces. I find it's a little bit more vibrant. What we'll do is we'll start with onions and garlic. If it's a dark sauce, we're gonna get some browning going on those onions. If it's a clear or a lighter or a blonde sauce, we'll sweat them. And then depending on the alcohol that we use, we're gonna add our alcohol next. If it's a fortified, some sauces I'll use fortified liquor and wine. I'll start with the higher alcohol first. We'll burn that off, and then we'll add wine. Then we'll burn that down, bring it down by half, and then we'll add our stock. And then we'll bring it up to a simmer. Now we add the stock cold. Does anybody know why we add the stock cold? What's that? Don't be bashful. Where are you? Say it again. Why? That's right. Very good. Very good. I'm sorry, I lost you in the lights there. It was like a fly ball. What he said is because you want it to come up to temperature, and that's exactly right. When you add cold or room temperature stock, what happens is it takes a little bit longer for it to come up to temperature. And what's happening as that's happening, I know most of you or all of you hopefully have made consommes or stocks and sauces in class. It starts to raft, it starts to pull up all the impurities, all the additional and extra fats and oils, maybe from our sauteing or from the skin or from the inside of the sauce, and it brings it right up to the top where you can scoop them right off. And Chloe we were doing that yesterday, right? We're skimming that off, all that. It sometimes looks like sea foam, whatever it is. You're just taking it right off because we don't want that in the finished product. How's it looking in there, Chef?
I think we're good.
Smells good.
Yes,
Smells done. This particular one, it's apple cider. It's an apple cider reduction sauce. So where I would add that in reference to the liquor and the stock, I believe I've referenced it in your recipes, is in between after the alcohol is burned off, we'll add the cider. Cider is highly acidic, so we'll let that reduce down a little bit. Once that's reduced down a little bit, then we add our stock, our pork stock, or if you're making a chicken dish, you can do chicken stock. Beef dish, you can do beef stock. A fish dish, we're doing a bluefish dish on our menu this week with roasted lentils and delicata squash, and I'm making an apple cider like jus for that. So in that application, I'm using half fish stock and half chicken stock. Fish stock, even as fresh as it is, sometimes I like to not use it too much of it because it can make things taste overly fishy. When we do seafood, we try to keep, when we're thinking about designing a seafood dish or a method for how to cook or really how to design a fish dish, I usually will use veg stock or half fish stock or fish and chicken if I want to get the protein up a little bit. When we talk about fresh seafood, what I want, what you tasted with that fluke crudo, you know how it was sweet, right? It was a little, you taste a little bit of the ocean, a little bit of the salt water, a little bit of the sweetness. When you reduce fish stock too much or when you overcook fish, it gets that fishy, really, really fishy, pungent. I don't care how fresh the fish is. If you cook the heck out of it, all the oils start to come out and it starts to get fishy. And it's the same with fish stock. When I make a seafood dish, I want it to taste like whatever the fish and seafood is in the dish, but I want you to get that fresh, vibrant flavor, even if it's a roasted or a reduced dish. And by switching it up like that and adding a little bit of a chicken stock or veg stock, that will help that. So we're gonna do something. I know it's been a very popular plating technique lately, but we're just gonna put a little bit on the plate. Call that like a swatch or a smear. I know that's kind of the in thing right now. We've got our beautiful, beautiful pork belly. Put that there. Now the carrot puree is very rich also, so we just need a couple ounces of it. We're not trying to overdo it. The veggies, I'm just going to put them on there as is, but what we would do is we'll just fire these in a pan. I like to take a small saute pan, get it hot for the pickup. I'll take my vegetables, which I've roasted and chilled, and for the pickup or the fire, I'll get a hot saute pan, hit them, and then I'll take a little bit of the jus at the end and just lightly glaze them, which makes them hot, they're crisp, they're tender on the inside, and they've got a beautiful, beautiful flavor to them. What's better than vegetables that taste like bacon? And you can really have a lot of fun with this. We try not to, we want the dishes to be beautiful, but we don't want them to be overly ornamental. I don't want every dish to look like I've been working on it for 35 minutes before it goes out, especially in an open kitchen like we have. People get hungry, and if they see you fussing with their food too much, it's fun for a few minutes, but then they're ready to eat. So we try to get it to them as quickly as we can. The other thing about stuff like this is it gets cold, and you don't want, even if you have beautiful, refined, wonderfully plated food, if it's hot, it needs to get to the guests hot. And as a chef and as a cook, you need to respect that, and time is very important. Another thing that we can do is to make sure that our plates are warm before we put them out by either using a heat lamp or a warming oven to get those plates warm. Every plate that we do at the restaurant has to go through my pass. Every single plate goes through my station. I still work the line every night, and every single plate has to go by me. I have all the garnishes, as well as I usually work the grill and the roast station, so I'm making the meats and whatnot, but I'm also finishing all the dishes. And if I touch that plate and it's supposed to be hot and there's hot food on there and the plate's cold or chilled, it's going back and we're gonna replate it. If it's on the inverse, if it's a salad and the plate is warm out of the dishwasher, it doesn't go out, we remake it. Cold food, cold plates, hot food, hot plates. If it's a room temperature dish, like a cheese plate or certain salads or first courses that we do, will be kind of a mixture of temperatures, some chilled, some warm or room temperature. We'll do room temperature plates for that. But the dish is one of those details that you should not overlook. This over-reduced just a touch, but in the pot, but yes?
I was wondering if you could talk about whenever you were first starting out, how did you establish your relationship with the different farmers and suppliers?
That's a great question. When we first started out, when I opened, I guess now it's going on 11 years, which seems like a long time. When I opened, it was myself, one other cook who I went to school with, and one waiter who I worked with at a restaurant before I opened. And everything was very labor intensive and difficult. And the landscape of farming and sourcing was not what it is today, and where in the direction that it's headed in. There's a lot of younger people and great fallow farmland that's being reused, and started to get some people on there that are farming new vegetables and new things to use. That wasn't the case when I first opened, so it was really hard to find direct sources for all the things. And it was just really driving out to the farms, trying to do some research, either hearing from one person or hearing from another person that this person was growing this or this person was growing that, and either trying to call them up or just go out to their farm and see, hey guys, can I see what you're doing? Are you interested in selling to me? That kind of thing. It was a lot of pounding the pavement and trying to make it happen in that way. Now, we still do a lot of that, but there's a lot of people now that will just come to the restaurant or call, because there's a lot more people farming, which is really exciting. For the first time in modern history, instead of land being taken from farmers, it's being converted back into farmland, which is I don't know if we or you as cooks or myself, if we really understand and appreciate that, how special and wonderful that is to see land being converted back into farming. So there's a lot more people doing it, and it makes it much easier for us now to source the stuff. But it's really about relationships. It's about people, and really just getting out there and seeing if they have something that you can use. If they are interested in selling to you, it's important too. As a cook and as a chef, when you're sourcing, a lot of these farmers are doing things on such small levels that they can sell all their product at the farmer's market, and they don't really need to or want to sell it at wholesale prices to you. It's too much work, and they're not going to get the money that they want. So if that's the case, then you just try to find different farmers. I don't try to beat them up on prices or anything. I just try to find people that really want to work with us, that want to showcase their product in the restaurant, and that's been something that's been successful for us. So we're going to go with this. We're missing some fried sage. Did you use all the fried sage, Chef? You ate it all, didn't you? Did that answer? I know it's a really big, expansive question, and there's a lot more that I could say about that. It's an exciting time to be a cook. There's so much more available locally, grown things and sourced. And now we talk with the seafood and the animals, even with the whole animals. That was almost impossible, both through. Can I have that big mixing bowl and the cake means? Both just because of the availability in the product, but also the avenues, like the distribution avenues. There's a lot of laws, like health code laws and distribution laws and licensing laws that have to be followed. And some of that infrastructure hasn't been there, and that we're working on that as well to try to make it more accessible for farmers to get their products directly to us and not to have to sell them to distributors and wholesalers. So that's a huge part of it as well. When I was doing these recipes, what I wanted to do is give you parts and pieces that you could then take and recreate and do different things. So we talked about, pickling. We talked about sauces. We talked several times about pureeing, that method. We also talked about brining, which is something hopefully you can take and do simple roasting, and how nice and vibrant that can be. And another great thing that we're going to talk about is candying nuts and making simple sauces for your desserts that you can then take and use in a lot of different applications. Are those circle cutters over there? There we go. This pumpkin cake recipe, this is a recipe that I did, that I created from scratch. A lot of recipes as cooks, we get them we do research, we find other people making things, and there's nothing wrong with that. As long as you're not plagiarizing and you're giving people credit. We all take ideas from sharing. We've all got an education from sharing with each other. and that's important. And as you find your way and as you find things that work, you'll make notes, and over the course of the years, you'll start to develop your own recipes, which may have started off as someone else's and then modified and tweaked and changed, and you'll create all these new things, and it'll take you in new avenues. And the only thing I could say to you is share that. Talk about it. Don't be secretive about it, unless you're planning on, making a super secret sauce that you want to jar and market as that sauce, and you want to be proprietary about the recipe. That's fine if that's what you want to do. But if you're a cook and you want to be in a kitchen and you want to learn, share your recipes. Talk about them with each other, because you've learned from other people, and other people should have that same ability to learn with you. So I'm never secretive about my recipes, except when Bill asks for them. So don't show him this packet. But that's really something that, I didn't learn any of this stuff by myself. And if I could impart one of the few things, I know there's a page in there with some of the simple thoughts and philosophies that I have, but it's to share. You can't be greedy about information. You can't just take and not give, because then we don't have a good atmosphere for learning and a good atmosphere for growth and development. And everybody should learn every day. Doesn't matter what level you rise to. Doesn't matter if you're the chef, the owner, if you've got 25 years in the business and someone has 6 months in the business and they want to tell you about something that their grandmother used to do when they were growing up, or something that their dad did, or something that that was very popular in their hometown from whatever state or country that they come from. Be open, listen to that, take it in, because you never know what you're going to learn. I learn so much from my cooks every day and from my wait staff every day, and that's what keeps it young and exciting and vibrant and keeps good energy in our kitchen. And that's the only thing I would say. Don't be bashful about sharing your recipes. For this particular one, this cake recipe started out as a carrot cake. I really wanted to make carrot cake. One of my least favorite desserts as a kid was carrot cake. And I always see these things as a challenge, because as a cook, I'm very curious, and I want to make things that I like, and I want to make myself like things. If I didn't like, I used to not like salmon when I was when I was in college. I couldn't stand salmon, and I worked really, really hard to make salmon something that I would enjoy, or that I knew how to make good salmon. Even if I didn't choose to eat it, I would make it. Now I couldn't eat enough of it. I love the stuff. But as a cook, you can't be stuck in your own stigmatisms or in your own box of what you like and don't like. It limits you if you say, I just don't eat fish, or I just don't eat meat, or I just don't eat this, or I don't like root vegetables, or I don't like beets. You have to know what they taste like. How can you, as a cook, make it for somebody or understand the food if you don't at least understand how it works and how to make it? So for me, carrot cake, it always tasted good, but I couldn't stand the texture of carrot cake with all the chunky raw carrots and raisins and pineapples and all the million different versions of it. I wanted it to be smooth like a chiffon cake, or smooth like a regular chocolate or yellow cake, but still have that beautiful flavor. So I worked on trying to develop this recipe that had that, and what I came up with was this. And now we use it. It's one of those recipes I call a workhorse recipe. You'll hear me say that a lot. It's a recipe that once you learn the method and the ingredients and the way to make it, you can then take that and you can make carrot cake, you can make pumpkin cake, you can make squash cake, you can make, we added cocoa powder to this recipe and beet puree instead of the pumpkin puree, and made like a natural red velvet cake with it, which is another fun, interesting thing to do. So there's a lot of different things that you can do with it if you learn the method. So really all we do is we take the eggs and the sugar, we mix them. You want to get to work over here? Yeah, how about you get in here? Get in here. All right, we're going to crack those eggs in there. Go ahead. Now with a cake, and again, I experimented with the methods in this. I did a lot of reading and research. It's not rocket science. Do we have a whisk, Chef?
Yeah, there's one on the side.
Oh, is that what this is? This is a big whisk. Let me show you a trick. That's good, right? You get an eggshell. It happens to me all the time, okay? There's this magnetism with eggshells. Okay, so if you drop one in there, a really nice way to get it out is you take the larger piece of the eggshell and you just scoop it out like that, and it sticks to the eggshell, which is a nice way. Is the worst thing you could do when you're in a hurry, especially if you're in a professional kitchen or if you're getting something ready for the holidays, is be chasing around those bits of eggshell in the bowls, and they just won't come out, will they? You could be chasing them around for days. So that's a nice little trick. Another thing, now we're starting with the eggs, so we'll crack it right in here. If you weren't starting with the eggs, they weren't the first thing in the bowl, you crack them into something separate. There's nothing worse than if you're making a brioche or making a recipe and you crack the egg in there and the shell or a piece of the shell goes in there. And you can either say, c'est la vie, it's in there if you're cooking for your family, or if you're cooking for customers and people that are paying you, you can take it out and strain it, or you can smear it out in a sheet pan, and that's no fun. But you have to do it because the last thing you want is someone to have the most amazing 5-course meal that they've ever had and be blown away and then choke on an eggshell on the last bite, which is probably what will happen. So she's gonna whisk the eggs and the sugar together. Now we do this in a mixing bowl, or we can do it in a KitchenAid as well. Go ahead. You're gonna whisk those up. That one's got a little crack in it. Until they get nice and ribbony, okay? And then the next thing we do, what we've done here is you can use canned pumpkin puree, but we don't. We make our own purees. We make everything from scratch. So this is just pumpkin and water chopped up and then cooked down till it's completely tender, till it's like fall apart tender, and then we puree it. As you can see, the blender gets a lot of work at our restaurant until it's really smooth, and then we'll pass it through I won't go through a chinois, but I'll probably pass it through like a double mesh or a finer single mesh strainer until we get this really nice, beautiful puree. And this, again, works with similar fruits and vegetables with the same property.
I was pretending to be right-handed for you.
We had a lot of fun. She's left-handed, and I'm right-handed, so yesterday trying to show her how to break down the fish was a lot of fun. I almost cut my fingers off a couple of times, but we made it through with all our digits, so it was fun. So we're gonna add our pumpkin puree and our buttermilk. Now you have a little bit more leeway with this stuff until you start to add your flour. Once you're adding flour to anything, you have to be careful, and it doesn't mean that you can't keep mixing it, but you have to understand what's happening in the bowl or in the mixing dish. You're gonna develop gluten. In certain recipes, you need to develop that gluten. In certain recipes, you don't want to overdevelop the gluten. But just understand that that's what you're doing. The more you mix it, you're going to make it more developed in the gluten and make it a little bit. Everyone knows what gluten is? Yeah? Everyone knows what it does? What does it do? Crickets? We should have a crickets button over here. Somebody raise their hand. That's right. It makes elasticity. It helps to give it structure. Now with cakes and pastries, you really want to be careful with that because we don't want them. You know, who's had a rock hard scone before? Everybody, right? Because 9 times out of 10, when people make scones, they mix the hell out of them, and it's like spackle, and then it's like a piece of cement brick after you're done. That's one of those quick ones that you really just barely mix, okay? Like the drop breads, biscuits, things like that. Cakes, we just mix it just enough. We don't want it to be overmixed, okay? So that being said, she's got all the stuff in there. Okay, we're gonna take, do we have another bowl? I can use this, it's fine, chef. We take our flour, and we take all our spices. You can see that I left you a little spice set on there in the recipe. We're going to take all our dries. You can put your wet. This is the vanilla. We can go in with the wet. Everything but the oil. We're going to save the vegetable oil for the end, and I'll tell you why in a second. All the wet can go together now, and then we'll take all our dry and we'll mix them together, and then we're going to sift them in. And that's it. Especially when you're dealing with spices, you really want to make sure that they're incorporated, because the last thing you want to do is get a big clump of clove or allspice, which are beautiful, beautiful flavors, but not when you get a whole mouthful of them. There you go. And now you're just going to You're going to sift that in, and we're going to get you a, you can use the whisk. I'm just going to put it all in there. Ready?
Yeah, it's about to get crazy.
You ready for this?
Oh no.
Now this recipe, I've teared this down. When we bake it, we'll usually bake it with a, in half sheet pans or with multiple, yeah, you're just gonna take it. See, now that's the reason that we sift that out, because all those little clumps in there are what's gonna, they're gonna stay in there, and we don't want that. So we'll just take it and we'll just work it through. Sometimes if you use like a thicker kosher salt, you have to blitz it through the spice mill because it will get stuck in these double mesh, which has happened here. So we're just gonna, now that everything is through there, we're just gonna add the salt, okay? But you saw how easily it could clump. We're just gonna incorporate it. This is a looser batter, so again, you have a little bit more leeway with how much you mix it. Some with breads and certain cakes, it's a lot thicker and drier, so you really have to be careful not to overmix it. So we can see it looks like cake batter, right?
Yep.
Now we'll take this. Now I've tried this in different stages, and I always find that finishing with the oil ends up with a better cake. It gets a little flat, and it affects the volume when we add the fat in the beginning or with the other ingredients. So this will be the last thing that we'll whisk in there. So we'll take that. Now, as I started to say, but I get sidetracked, which happens to me a lot. I've teared this recipe down to a quarter sheet pan, which makes it really accessible for you guys to try this at home or try this in your kitchen. It also makes for something that's easy to handle or easy to work with in a professional kitchen. Where's our spray? Dude, why do you keep hiding all my stuff? Just spray the pan, super simple. We've tried different techniques with this as far as what temperatures to bake it at, and I really find that baking it at the low temperature, that this is one thing that I will tell you, bake it at the temperature that I told you to bake it at, because it ends up with a really beautiful, even cake, as you can see when I unmold the TV Magic piece right here. You're just gonna take that, see it's nice and ribbony. Perfect. What you do want to do is make sure your sheet pan is flat, even it out, nice and simple, right in the oven. There you go. You want to cook it at that one? There you go, chef. Thank you so much. And that's pretty much it for that, okay? We're going to bake that at, I know we got that oven a little hot, so we'll just turn that down to 225. And we're going to bake that, and then this is by the miracle of TV Magic, this is our finished cake. Thank you, Noah. So we'll take this, okay? Now again, geometry is fun. We use it, it's visual. We use it when we're plating, when we do the cuts and deciding the shapes. I also think about product loss and making sure that we're not wasting things. I don't want to have so much trim that half the product has gone into the garbage or gone into staff meal. There's only so much we can keep for staff meal, although the staff loves when there's extra stuff for staff meal. And that's another thing that I will talk about in a few minutes too, is the importance of staff meal, cooking for your staff. We'll take something like a circle mold or a square mold. You know, if we've got a lot of squares going on, maybe I want one dessert to be circle or one thing to be square, just so that there's some textural differences from a visual standpoint also. This is one thing that we don't mind. While I don't want to be wasteful and I want to make sure that we have enough for service, I don't mind a little bit of trim with this, because what we do is we take all the trim and we mash it up in the KitchenAid with a little bit of simple syrup, and we make cake truffles. And anyone who doesn't order dessert, we'll usually get, or someone that's had a really long meal and they had dessert, earlier, before they leave, we'll send them a little truffle or a little minute like of something, just one bite of something sweet before we drop their check, just to say thank you and to leave a little bit of little sweetness in their mouth, a little gentle surprise. That doesn't mean come in and don't order dessert though, okay? So we take that, and you hope that you get even pieces. And you can cut these, trim them if you want to even them off. But it's just a really, really pretty cake. It's nice and spongy. It's got great flavor. I'm going to just take one of these, and then we can chop this up into a million pieces for everyone to try. It'll bake evenly or almost evenly. So we'll take this. I'll take this guy right here. Chef, you want to throw this in the back? Thanks so much. So we'll take our cake, okay? Now we've talked about honey pecans are something that I chose for this particular one. I think it goes really, really nicely with this, with the flavor profiles in this dish. But you can use walnuts are really nice for this as well. You can use a mixture of nuts for this. We do use a lot of nuts in our cooking because I think, one, they add protein, they add flavor, they add texture. It's nice to have a different component altogether than to just have produce and protein, meat-based proteins on plates, especially when you get to desserts. So we made caramel. I'm not going to demo this. There's a really nice recipe in there that we use at the shop in the packet. The important thing about caramel, you will see, and some people are shocked when they see a little bit of corn syrup in some of my recipes. We do use that as a stabilizer to stop it when we do big batches of things, to stop it from crystallizing so that it'll last a little bit longer. You don't have to use it if you don't want to. We're not using it as the sugar component in there. Again, we're just using it to stabilize it. So again, if you have an issue with that, whether it's dietary or your ideals of not wanting to use corn syrup, you can still make these recipes without that. But we'll put a little bit of that in there. We make a caramel. It's a little cold, so this stuff is nice and thick. So again, we might heat this up, or we might just do it, depending on the dessert, we might do it as is. Desserts to me are something, just like everything else, where balance is so important, okay? Yes, it should be sweet. It's the end of the meal, your mouth is tired, you've had a lot of savory things, you want to add some sweetness to them, but it shouldn't be too sweet. When you have a dessert, candy should be really sweet. It's in small doses. You have an ounce, a half an ounce, a quarter of an ounce of a piece. It's one bite and it's gone. If you're going to eat a 4 or 5 ounce portion of something, there has to be balance. There has to be more than just sweetness to it, because if you eat that and it's just candy and too sweet, it's going to do the same thing as having a dish that's too rich or too fatty. It's just going to completely overload your palate. Also, you're going to send somebody into like a sugar shock or a sugar imbalance where their blood sugar is going to go off and they're going to crash. And that's not something, people that are diabetic or have sugar issues will think about that. The rest of us don't always think about that, but it will happen. And when they leave your restaurant, if they start to crash or start to feel a little bit down, they're going to remember that. Even at a subconscious level, we want to be thinking about how our food affects the diner, how the portion sizes affect the diner, how the flavors affect the diner, both during the meal and at the end of the meal. And if somebody eats a 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 course meal and it tastes great and it was the best dinner of their life, if they're too full at the end of it, or if their sugar is way off, they're going to not feel great, and they're going to remember that. And they're either going to not come back, it's going to be a slight, downturn from a great experience, or they're going to say, I'm only going to come back there once in a while when I have an anniversary or a birthday. And for restaurants like me, I want you to come back. I want you to come back every day. I want you to come back once a week, twice a week. So an important part of that is not just giving you a great value and a great product, but making sure that you feel good at the end of eating it. So sugar is something with desserts that I just wanted to talk about, that you really want to think about the sweetness and not making desserts too sweet. So this, we've got our cake. This is a great alternative for ice cream. It's shelf stable when you're doing a big plate up, or you have a big party or something like that. Doing something like this, I developed this. It's like whipped cream, but it has cream cheese in it. So it's kind of somewhere in the middle of ice cream and whipped cream, where it's room temperature. You know, when we were doing a wine dinner not too long ago, and one of my problems with not problems, but one of the things that I don't like about ice cream for wine pairings is that it does go flavor-wise with a lot of things, but the temperature, it changes the temperature in your mouth. And when we do a wine dinner, for me, I go backwards. It's all about the wine, and I want the food to support and to be an important part of that. But temperature-wise, you taste the wine, the ice cream is really cold. If it's not a fortified wine, it's going to change the flavor of the wine. So I came up with this. It's like a mascarpone kind of thing, or ice cream-ish kind of thing, but it's really great for dishes like that. Do a little molasses on there because it's fall, and it makes sense with the flavors in this. Yes. Did you say for fish sauce or sausage? Oh, fish stock. That's a great question. She asked what kind of fish do I like to use for fish stock. Ideally, I'll make fish stock with anything I can get my hands on or whatever we have in the restaurant. Certain fish aren't great for it, or you have to understand that they're going to be a little oilier and a little stronger. Bluefish, tuna, any of those larger species fish can be a little difficult and extra fishy. My favorite one to use is bass. Striped bass, I think, makes the most beautiful fish stock. Also, any of the, like even the flounder, fluke, things like that. But black bass and striped bass for me are my favorite ones to make fish stock with. Another thing that we'll talk about real quickly is when we do fish stock, and when I make any of my vegetable stocks, which are a lot different from the meat stocks, because a meat stock we're going to cook for 6 to 8 hours or overnight. With a fish stock or a vegetable stock, think of it more like a tea, where we're just trying to suck the flavor out of it. We don't want to cook it to the point of it being over pungent or being cloudy. When you have those clear stocks, it's important not to boil them too much because they'll get very cloudy on you. So, again, not to jump back to this, you see what I'm doing right here is I'm just ripping some fresh mint. There's no mint in the dish per se, but again, we use a lot of fresh herbs. I love to use fresh herbs to finish dishes with. One, for color, especially this time of year when everything is orange and brown. It adds some vibrancy of color on the dish, but more importantly, it adds vibrancy of color on your palate, and it helps to wake things up. Some of my favorite things to eat are Thai food, and you see how they love to finish the dish with fistfuls of fresh mint and basil and cilantro, and what that does to the rich sauces and the textures. It just gives everything some lift and some wonderful, wonderful flavor. So we'll do that a lot with our. So here we go. I'm not going to go too crazy on this. We're just going to put some more mint on the plate, and we'll put a little bit of finishing salt. We will use a lot of finishing salt for desserts, not in the point where we're making everything really salty, but some of our ice creams, some of our chocolate dishes, some of our cakes and things like that, we will finish with just the tiniest bit of sea salt. And what that does is it just kind of, salt enhances flavor. It doesn't just enhance the flavor of savory food, it enhances the flavor of lots of different types of food, of all food really. So it's a nice way to just kind of add a pop, a nice surprise to it. This is some honey that we get from a Quidneck farm. One of the other things that's really important when you're sourcing and trying to get good relationships and good products in is to think about all your products and not just your protein or not just your vegetables. What else? Who else can I? Oh, thanks, Chef. We just put a little bit right on the cream. I'm not going to go crazy, but we'll just put a little bit on the cream, and we're done. There we go. So. I don't know if you guys are going to get, I don't know how we're doing on time. I'm probably 3 hours over, but are we good? We're okay?
Great.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. It's really nice to meet you. Can we have a round of applause for Chef Stanley? For me, being, maybe in like I still like to think the beginning, but closer to the middle of my career, maybe. I'm not just starting off, but I've got some experience down. But it's really nice to meet young people and to share ideas and the energy of young people. But it's a real treat to meet someone who's been in the business and been so successful for so long. So it was really nice to talk to Chef Stanley over the last couple of days. And it's so hard to be in this business. It's hard to be, we all know, we've heard in class and cost control and in some of the other classes that we take, the failure ratio of restaurants, but we're all still here and we're all still trying. To be open for as long as Chef Stanley's been open is it's really something special. So it was a pleasure to talk with you these past few days. So thank you.
One question for you.
Yes.
Talking about opening your restaurant and following what Dr. Deacon says, that a lot of students here would like to follow your path in being a chef owner.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any advice for them?
Absolutely. Don't do it. No, I'm just kidding. Run! No, just kidding. For those of you that have those aspirations, I say do it. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be very challenging. I'm not going to lie to you. It's hard work. There's a lot of sacrifice that goes into it. You miss birthdays, you miss holidays, you miss trips, you miss vacations. You're working when other people are celebrating. You don't see your family enough. You have significant others that get frustrated and aggravated, and you might have loss of relationships and loss of time to do other things that you like. And that makes it sound horrible, but those things considering, I recommend it highly, fully. If you're passionate, as long as you understand those things, that's the only thing, is be aware of the lifestyle that you're getting into and the time commitment and the passion that it takes. You cannot do this and be half in. You have to be all in. You have to be all in if you do this. You have to love it. You have to love it so much that it hurts. You have to love it so much that when it doesn't go right, it pains you, and that you're so sensitive to everything that's going on around you, and you try really hard to be on top of everything, that when it doesn't happen, it actually physically makes you sad and upset. If you care that much, and you can take all those other things and try to find balance in your life with those other things and go into it, then you can be successful at this. But you just have to be aware of what it takes, and as far as passion and commitment. I left a few anecdotes in the first or second page of there. I've got plenty of those to share with you guys. But you just have to work hard. You have to work hard. This business, as any of these guys will tell you, is just as much about people as it is about food. So you have to learn not just cooking skills, but person skills. You have to learn how to work with people of the same walk of life, people of different walks of life, people of different age groups, people of different backgrounds, people of differing opinions. You have to be okay with that. You have to be able to get the best out of the people around you, whether it's the people working for you or whether it's the people you're working for, or whether it's your guests. You have to learn how to cultivate that in people, and it has to be something that matters to you, because if you don't like people, you're in the wrong business. So I would say that learning people skills, and then and business skills was the other thing. You can't just be a good cook. You have to balance a checkbook. You have to learn the basics. And there's a really beautiful romantic side to this business, and about the food and the passion and the sourcing and the integrity of ingredients and the flavors and the textures. And you'll hear me very often talk about the communal experience about eating and breaking bread together and how special that is. And for me, that's what keeps me going, and that's what's in it for me as far as why I like to do what I do. But you have to pay reverence and attention and understanding to the business aspect of it. It's all well and good to source sustainable ingredients, but if you can't keep your doors open or balance your checkbook or pay your bills, then your business is not sustainable. And in that case, you're not sustainable, so you won't carry on and you won't continue. So above all else, you have to take business classes, pay attention to wherever you're working. No chef is going to pay you as a line cook to come in and watch the ordering, or to come in and ask questions about ordering, or help with the ordering, or help with inventorying, which we all love so much to do, but it's a necessary part of the job. But if you come in early or stay late or come in on your day off, you can learn about those things. You can take some classes here, some cost control classes, which I'm not going to say I didn't fall asleep once or twice, but in retrospect, it's probably the most important class that you can take here. It's like, I know for some of you guys, it's like pulling teeth, because you want to be in the kitchen, learning how to cook, learning how to break down animals. But if you don't know how to pay for that animal, if you don't know how to take a 300-pound pig or a 700-pound side of beef and cost it down to the ounce, and learn how you should charge your guests with it, and learn how you can pay that farmer back, and learn about terms, and learn about where that money's going to come from, and how long you need to pay that person back, and developing those kind of cost relationships, it doesn't matter. You're not going to go very far. So really keep well-rounded. We talk about balance and flavor and balance on the plate. You need a balanced education, both here at school, but also in the real world. Ask your chefs, ask the kitchens that you're in, what does that cost? How did you come up with it? There's not just one way to do those things, but you should be doing them and learning those different methods so that it becomes a conscious part of your being and how you develop a dish. I look at dishes all the time when I want to create a dish, or when I think about a menu. I really want to work with this, I really want to do this, I really want to do that, and then I cost some of the ingredients out. I'm like, this just doesn't make sense. We can't do 5 ounces of this. I'd have to charge $50 for me to make my food costs on this, and I don't want to be there for entrees. I want my entrees, the highest price entree on my menu, unless we do like a something for two, if I'm doing a weird or different cut on an animal. I like to keep them under $30. I really try hard because I want people to eat there often. So I have to work to make those costs make sense. I can't constantly be making concessions and not making my food costs. So maybe I'll go 2 or 3 ounces of that protein and then take some neck or some shank or braise it off and add another 2 ounces of that or another thing. But you don't know those things unless you cost them out, and you have to know simple math and simple costing. So really the business, if I didn't have my business background, I would have been dead in the water a long time ago. So
you can see one thing that is also very important, always communications. And I want to thank Chef Wagner because he's communicating sound advice to you. And I just want to thank you also for being our 167th DVC. It's our honor to have you here. Thank you very much.
thank you.
One of the things that we do at Johnson & Wales at the College of Culinary Arts in the Distinguished Chef program is that we always give the chef a medallion, and I'm very proud to be able to put this around you and indoctrinate you into the DVC scholarship at Johnson & Wales.
Thank you very much.
It's good. I would also like to honor Chloe Marshall.
Is that my diploma?
She's good.
Very nice.
She's smart.
Yeah, she's been hanging around you too long.
Yeah.
Come May, though. Yeah. But I'd like to just read this certificate of scholarship awarded by the College of Culinary Arts to Chloe Marshall, the Distinguished Visiting Chef Scholarship in the name of Derek Wagner. And as I mentioned earlier, she'll be receiving a $2,000 scholarship in Chef Wagner's honor.